Hello, it's Theo and Nikki Luna. It is Wednesday, the 11th of December, and it's a very cold evening here in the United Kingdom.
Yep, it was howling wind before, but it seems to have calmed down now.
Yeah. So put up the Christmas decorations at my house today, which my kids got incredibly excited about, making it all feel very real for them. At the moment, we haven't got Pat. We don't know where she is.
I did write to her saying, "Don't leave me at the Facebook altar."
And we've been emailing and been trying to get in contact with her for the last hour, but we don't have Pat with us at this moment in time. So I'm just going to click on this one here on my other laptop so I can see names of people joining us this evening. So we've got let's have a look here as they're coming in. Wow, loads of you coming in already. Thank you. So you've got Annette, we have Ponce, we have Olympia, we have Lynn, we've got Daniel coming in from Arizona, we've got Carly from VA. Where's VA?
Vancouver.
We got Janice coming in. She says hello, and Simon says, "How are you guys?" We're good, thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
We're good. We're just wondering what we're going to talk about if we don't have a guest.
We might have to throw it out to you guys. So start thinking of some questions for us.
Hoka Svat says hi, and Pamela's here, and Christina's here, and Simon says, "Tell a joke." Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, right. Good one, Simon.
Maureen, hello from Michigan, and Tara's there, and Carly's there. Next week we shall be too. I'm glad you've gotten family time too. Yeah, Carly, you're gonna. Yeah, next week. I know my little ones have been pushing for days to put up the Christmas tree and the decorations. Jenny's just come in from New Mexico, and Carly says Virginia, not Vancouver.
Oh, sorry,
VA, Virginia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. That's all good. So Lot and Jones coming from Canada. So well, you guys are coming in thick and fast. I'm just going to check my email one more time on my other machine to see whether we have any response from Pat, which we don't have yet.
I'll give you a little bit of backstory while we're waiting for Pat. Yeah. I last met her 10 years ago. So a decade has passed.
Wow.
And I think about how much has happened in my life in a decade. Heaven knows what she's been up to, which is one of my questions. But I met her at a gathering of ancient traditions in Nagpur, which is a town in India, in the very center of India. So I actually did have a post that was the heart of India, Mother India. So that gathering, it was quite cerebral, because a lot of Indians are quite cerebral. And but what I brought back from it with me was we were looking at what unites us and what diversifies us. And that's really where I got the idea for episode 2 of the documentary series, was healing our ancestral wounds, because I realized that's the one thing that we all carry. You know, I really believe that's what unites us, and maybe that's what we're here for, is to do that individual healing for each of us on our wounds, find the balm for our wounds.
It's quite amazing, because I mentioned it on a Facebook Live about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think. I went and did family constellations, and I did it for my family and for my ancestors. And if you've never done family constellations, basically you have somebody that sort of runs the session, and then you have different people in the room that will play the part of you, or your son, or your father, or your grandfather, or your great-grandfather, and they constellate different situations. And there was so much ancestral stuff to be cleared, because my father grew up in Indonesia, but his father, who was also called Theo van Dort, he was shot. He was executed when my dad was only 18 months old. So you can imagine the karmic grief that's then carried on through the ancestral line. And my youngest son, my eldest son, he struggles in the school system, so we homeschool him. But it was fascinating to hear about how a lot of these, what they are labeling ADD and those sort of things that are getting passed down, can actually be a lot to do with ancestral trauma that has not been healed.
Yeah, I did a workshop with a constellation workshop with Dietrich Klinghardt, and he said exactly that. Yeah, from different
It was amazingly
branches.
powerful. And then I can share this now because they said I wasn't allowed to share it for 21 days afterwards. But basically, I had to write a letter to all of my ancestors. So I wrote it to my father, who passed in 2005, to my grandfather, to my great grandfather, and to my great great grandfather, whose name was Levi Elkin Van Dort.
Wow, what a name!
Yeah, he was born in the late 1700s, I believe, and then I had to basically I had to write this letter, and it was basically just to say, I have a place in my heart for you. There is nothing to be paid. And it was almost because, and the way that the family constellations work, it lets go of it on the quantum level.
Yeah.
Because it said everything. It says we just live in this ethereal soup, but it just lets it go on the quantum level. And then I had to read out that letter and that prayer for 21 days. And then after 21 days, I then had to burn it. And then I had to take the ashes and bury it in the soil.
Wow. And I wonder if having in the male line of your family, you carry the same name through the generations. I wonder if that in itself also carries some family karma.
It does. Yeah.
In a stronger way because you've put a name to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carrying that resonance through.
Yeah.
So fascinating. I was blown. It was amazing. It was this team came over from South America, and I was blessed because I got a private consultation because of somebody said, "Oh, Theo, you need to come and see these people," and it was just amazing 40 minutes. And we have Pat McCabe, I can see coming in here.
I did say on the Facebook page that I'll just check in with Pat, but at the end of this Facebook Live, we'd like to just do a minute's, just a prayer and a minute's thought meditation for Julian Assange. Okay,
so what I'm going to do, I'm going to add Pat to the stream. We may have some technical issues just for the first 30 seconds, so bear with us. Let's put him here.
Hey.
Hi, Pat. Can you hear us?
Hey.
Hi. Hi, Mama.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Nice to have you with us. Thank you.
So
I'm so glad to get in. It was a little bit
Oh,
hard
well
to get in, but
done.
I got in. I busted in.
Well done. Just to tell everyone that Pat has literally just flown in from Scotland, where she's been on our lands. And so I don't know how long you arrived back, but it sounds like you just scooted in.
Well, I did get back yesterday evening, but then I had to drive up north. So I've been on the road. But now I'm home and with you and happy.
So grateful that you joined us. So I just filled in with everyone, telling them that we met a decade ago in Nagpur in India. And that the one thing I personally came away with in that time was that the one thing we all seem to have in common is everyone carries a wound, their wounding. And that's really what inspired me for the episode 2 of our docuseries, Healing Our Ancestral Wounds, which you speak in.
Yeah. At this point, I've been saying that I feel like we're a traumatized species, multi-generational.
Yeah, really. So do you want to just introduce yourself to people, Pat, of the tribe you come from and your medicine name, if that's appropriate?
Sure. So greetings, everybody. Really happy to be here with you. Just been hearing feedback from all directions about the series, and that makes me really glad and happy that there's been something offered to the people that people are responding to. I was grateful to be a part of it. So my mama named me Patricia Catherine McCabe, and there's actually a pretty long story about that name even. But I'll also say that I'm from the Dene people over here in the southwest, what is now called the United States. And so I'll say She'e'iya, Tachi Nishli, Aro Ashi Ibashishchi, Madish Geshne Dashanale, and Taushi Daushiche, Guatawasani Nishli. And I was also adopted into the Lakota spiritual way of life, and have the great honor and privilege of being given a name in that tradition. And I was named Wiakpa Najiwi, which translates maybe roughly in English to womaning, standing, shining. Yeah.
Well, that sums you up perfectly. So Gosh, a decade's gone by. I just said to Theo, everything that happens in a decade, if I think about my life. So, and I'm sure things have changed in your life too, and that there are different things that you currently are present for you in your life and that you work with in your teachings. So tell us what you do. You travel and you teach and you speak at gatherings. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, indeed. So much a decade all the way around and on the planet and through many dimensions and everything else, I think. Well, I guess the short of it is this, I do everything I can to be able to listen for spirit and to be able to listen for the direction of spirit and also the Mother Earth. And so whatever they propose, I try to be ready and willing and able. And I feel like, a big part of the process since I last saw you was for all of my guides and helpers to help me grow in faith and in willingness, and also to expand my understanding of cause and effect, I would say. So at one point they were saying to me, your understanding of cause and effect is rudimentary. It's rudimentary, and they're really scolding me. And so I said to them, I believe you. I believe that's absolutely true, especially if you're saying it to me. And so I said, all right, I'm willing to understand more about cause and effect. What can I know? What can you teach me as this human being? What more can how else can I participate in cause and effect on behalf of life, light, and love? And so, boy, that's all I had to say. And so I feel like since then, I've been getting a lot of lessons about different kinds of cause and effect. And so one of the first things that they started working with me about time. They insist over and over again that time is not what we think it is. Time is not what I think it is. And that it's much more pliable and approachable in ways that I certainly hadn't really thought of. I believe that most of us are taught that time moves in one direction, and once it's gone, that's it. And but the first thing they said to me when I said I was willing to learn about cause and effect was they said, all right, so if all times are happening at the same time, what is possible?
Wow.
So right away, like reality shifts. But I sure did like the sound of that. I was like, wow, it seems like lots of things would be possible if that were the case. And so they haven't totally on that one exactly. But the other place that they really started working on me with is they said, at this point, humanity, you would be better off, rather than try to tell a new story from this point forward, you would be better off retelling the old story. And if you were to go back and retell the old story, you would automatically change your trajectory into the future. So, that kind of logic landed with me. It landed in my body, but I said that makes sense on some level, but I'm not really sure what to do with that. Like, what would I do with that? And so I didn't have to wait too long. and they've asked me. They pointed out to me different places in human history in which they said, archetypal woundings of humanity had taken place. And I guess the way I would maybe try to define that from what I understand, I don't think this is the absolute definition. This is me trying to understand what they're saying. But the way I kind of take it at this point is to say, these are places in our history where there was like a fork in the road. And we took a fork that has created and set into motion many, many difficulties for us. And so they're asking, I believe, for us to revisit those places and to consider, sometimes I think it's about considering the harm that was done, and maybe doing things like forgiveness ceremony and reconciliation ceremony, like that. But also it's
Absolutely.
about seeing ourselves from a different vantage, you know, because when we look at some of these old stories, certainly, you know, we kind of have 20/20 hindsight now in some ways. In some ways, we're still completely missing it, I think.
Yeah.
But we do have more insight, and so to be able um, to literally retell those stories and say, wow, well, that didn't make any sense for us to do that at that time. I can see that now. But to do that collectively and to do that across generations, to do that cross-culturally, across spiritual systems of belief. Anyway, they say that if we do that, then things will automatically change into the future. So far, I've been asked to address 2 different instances in human history that they point out to me are archetypal woundings of humanity, and I feel like I'm watching something really pretty spectacular or amazing and satisfying and healing come from that kind of logic. So that's been a big part of my journey. Yeah.
You are a sister after my own heart. I think that's exactly where the healing lies. Absolutely. So I'm in agreement with you and them there.
It was so fascinating, Pat, because just before you came on the call, I was talking about doing some family constellation work, and that actually once you do that sort of healing work, it changes everything on a quantum level. And then you come on straight away and start talking about the fact that time is not linear. And so that, you know, we can affect things that happened previously because they haven't even happened yet, if you can get your head around that. And it was just fascinating. That's what Luna and I were talking about with our tribe before you came on, and then you'd come in and talk about that. It's like, I love the way it flows.
Right. Well, I've experienced that in doing my own personal therapeutic type work. Of going back and retelling the story of, like, say, a traumatic event that took place, and understanding it, sort of releasing all of the feelings and fear of maybe of myself when I was very young and couldn't really understand what was happening, or understand, you know, why people could be pushed to a place where they would commit acts that would create trauma, etc. And so I know that, you know, sort of retelling that story to my child self from an adult perspective even is kind of a well-known therapeutic way. And I know that for myself, I've experienced doing that. And what's amazing to me, kind of like you're saying, I guess you might call it on a quantum level. So then the entire vista changes, right? Like all these things that must have been there the whole time that were completely invisible to me, all of a sudden they're visible. All kinds of possibilities, avenues open. Things that seemed so large suddenly are, you know, insignificant. So, or not as weighted anyway. And so, you know, I guess it only makes sense then that we collectively can also do that kind of work for our kind.
And maybe those incidents, they were actually the greatest shifters of consciousness, in actual fact, if viewed from a different perspective. I don't know. Yeah. So there's one thing else I just wanted to go to with that was Jagger, who talks in our film, the Aboriginal guy who's wearing the very brightly painted kangaroo skin, and he talks about being a dream runner and running the dream time, and that it is this line that everything's happening at the same time, but he can go past, present, future and run up and down that line. So I was hoping maybe he would come when we do a possible gathering in the future and teach people that, so we know what to do with that information a little bit more. We learn how to play with it safely.
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
Be lovely. So we've got some questions coming in, Pat, if you don't mind. If I look over here, it's because I'm using 2 computers, so I'm not ignoring you. I just have to use 2 computers, so those I can't see the questions coming in. So Daniel has asked, the retelling of a past story, is that information coming from spirit, historically, or both?
Say the first part again. You kind of broke up
there. I think
there.
Referring to when you were talking about, you know, retelling past stories, He said, so in the retelling of the past story, is the information coming from spirit, historical, or both?
I think it's both. So the first place in our history that was pointed out to me in a kind of a radical way, actually, was what took place during the so-called witch hunts in Europe. And and so it's interesting because, you know, as soon as you say witch hunts, well, well, first of all, either people just completely tune out and act like you didn't just say that, or or they get very interested, or some people just start turning pale and shaking, you know. But anyway, but one of the things that I think comes up for most people immediately is, okay, this is about the mistreatment of women, right? And so if I had just been told, well, why don't you address, you know, what took place during the witch hunts, and I'd kind of just been on my own with it, I would have been definitely looking at, you know, the mistreatment of women, the mistreatment of feminine wisdom, and all those things certainly went through a great deal of harm at that point. But what I would have missed entirely was how destructive and degrading that was to the sacred masculine.
Yeah.
Because there were many, many men who were desperate to save the women around them. They were their wives, they were their daughters, they were their sisters, they were their mothers, you know. So of course there were.
Of course.
So I don't think I would have seen that right away, because I went right away into this like well-worn groove of rage as a woman. and so all of that opened up for me, and I've been through such a radical healing around Men's Nation, and my compassion and my desire to open up, you know, a narrative again about what sacred masculine might be, and what it whole language of it. And also, I think I would have missed the connection to the harm, because see, to me, what I felt like I witnessed in the process I went through a lot of visioning about what took place during the witch hunt. So in that sense, I say yes, spirit came in and was showing me some things. But what I didn't really get was that, you know, that was the destruction of indigenous Europe, and it took hundreds of years. And so what that tells me is they fought this onslaught just exactly the way indigenous people today are fighting it.
Yeah.
And they fought it for hundreds of years. So it's not like it just, you know, everybody just rolled over and said, great, yes, let's have this destructive thing moving through us. No, they knew, and they fought it. And I guess what I never realized was all the methodologies that were learned in that time were then put on those ships and sent in every direction to indigenous peoples. So I don't think I would have really made such a strong connection. So on the one hand, it was showing me history, but again, it was showing me like an enlarged view. It was putting a spotlight on pieces that I think I would have overlooked. And I think it's a lesson to me about how I hold stories and what I think I know. So I'll just say briefly, and there's probably other questions, so I'll try to move on. But the second archetypal wounding of humanity that I'm kind of in the middle of now. So we ended up doing ceremonies throughout Europe to address what took place during the witch hunts, and that was definitely through spiritual guidance. I was given a big how-to on that, and but now I'm sort of in the middle of this process, and what I've been asked to look at is our relationship to what we call science at this point. And it's very interesting because it sort of touches back on some of the witch hunts piece, because again, this is spirit's input that I wouldn't necessarily have put all this together, but it was, you know, there's a big, you know, they said humans love to participate in cause and effect. We know that about you. You love it. You're fascinated by it. You know, anyway, it's our thing. And so they said, so what we want you to look at is science, but what we could also say to you is the way you participate in science, magic, and medicine. Medicine meaning, like, I guess we could say, for lack of a better term, shamanic work. But I know in the UK, they talk much more about magic. They don't generally say medicine. But here in what we now call the United States, they talk about medicine. So science, magic, and medicine. That these three things are really deep ways in which humanity has been trying to participate in cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they said about it all was that we, in all three of those arenas, we are disregarding the law of sovereignty of all beings. So that my will, my course of action, my inquiries don't have the right to overcome anybody else's sovereignty. So anyway, I'm just kind of just starting to go into that inquiry. So I don't really know where it'll lead, but already new information is being presented to me that is based on historical fact, but it's being pointed out to me, I would say, by the Spirit to show me it in a new way. Because I never would have put those three things together. But now that I think about it, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Makes so much
that
sense.
makes total sense, right?
Of course. We work with all three.
Yeah.
It's true. Many of us.
And so is that what you've been doing over here in the United Kingdom, up in Scotland, Pat?
Well, no. So I feel like these are like my main threads that I need to be on. So they don't ever tell me I have to do these things. They say, we just want to point out that there's a possibility for a great healing if you were to pursue these things. So, they make it very tempting and attractive to me. So I go for the bait every time when they talk like that. They know how to do it.
So I saw photos of you. I saw photos of you in the wilds of the Highlands. So were you out trekking and really out in nature, or were you here teaching, like at Findhorn?
I was teaching. I had the opportunity to be with a group of international young people. I think there was about 30 of us.
Wow.
And it was age 18 to 28, and they were from all over the world, mostly from Europe, but also from other places. And this is my second year to work with them. It's called the Youth International Program. And so they're actually based in Sweden. They started out in Sweden, and that's where I taught last year. But then they do some traveling, and boy, this time they really picked a spot, huh? Going out on the island of Hoy in the Orkney Islands. And it was really fascinating for us to all be there together in that circumstance, because where we were, like, apparently there on one side of the island there actually is like a community and a population of about 200 people, but where we were, it was like us and lots of rocks and sheep. So it was really beautiful and amazing to be in that circumstance and be in this inquiry with these young people. So that's what I was doing over there this time.
Makes my heart sing that those young people have you as a teacher and mentor. How fantastic. God knows they need it.
Yeah, and they made my heart sing. My heart is full, and I'm all juiced up from being with these young people, and I feel gratitude.
I've got a few questions which I sort of took lead from your Facebook page and with what you're talking about and working with. And you talk about the soul. Your soul is also the soul of the earth, and how you work with that. Just talk about that a bit more.
Well, I think one way to talk about. Uh-oh.
No, that's it.
Sorry, were you saying something?
No, it's fine.
Okay. I think one way to talk about it is something that's been arising for me. And I've been saying that I don't think, at this point, I don't think that culture, and I guess in this case, I'm not thinking so much about modern world culture, but I'm thinking about indigenous people's cultures, people who have been embedded in place for, thousands of years. I've been saying that I don't think culture is a human construct. I think culture is the Mother Earth expressing herself as human being.
It's interesting.
And in any given place. So the place begins to inform, it informs certainly our diet, it informs our clothing, and it informs our ornamentation. our thinking. I mean, even on the island of Hoi, we got to meet this really amazing man. His name was Magnus. We called him Magnus the Magnificent. And I guess he came up from the ferry. The people ferry with him a few times, so they got to talking. And so anyway, his house that he lives in there on the island is 11 years old. In that house, and his in that house, and I mean, you know, we feel that island come to him, and so I guess, you know, it's being shaped by the Mother Earth herself. I'm meant for her. She's meant for me. We're meant for each other, and I think right now, modern world really needs leave for modern world to hear that. It's like, no, we are made for her, and we are meant for her. And so, in that sense, our soul is linked. I mean, we're literally soulmates, right?
Yeah.
And so so my daughter is doing some amazing work. I don't know if you know Lila June Johnston, but that's my daughter, and she, for her PhD, she's really studying traditional indigenous land management practices. And so part of what she was telling me the other day, which I just think is so beautiful, is that, you know, in the scientific way, they're taking core samples out of the earth, and indigenous people are involved. They're doing a lot of ceremony to ask permission and et cetera to do such a thing, because that's kind of a radical thing to do to our mom. But anyway, they're taking in a good way, they're taking these core samples from her. And so in those samples, they can see periods where the land was uninhabited by human beings, and the flora and fauna might be very limited, but once the human beings show up in a certain way, suddenly we have nut trees and fruits, and anyway, because they can tell by the pollen that is in those core samples, you know, about what arrived. And so she's saying, you know, what if we are not only not to do harm to the earth, but what if we're actually a big part of her flourishing? If we, again, you know, if we can follow that law of sovereignty of all beings, then we can really create a flourishing. So I guess that in some ways, I guess that's how I would think about that connection of my soul and Mother Earth's soul.
And so do you see that as the cleaning up of the oceans, of planting more trees again, of looking after the species? I mean, it's hard to know if it's right or wrong that some species are dying out, but just as many are also new species are coming through. But are there other ways that you see of assisting our Mother Earth in flourishing?
Well, not as much fun, but I really think that, you know, part of our process has to be a really deep, I mean, it's going to feel like humbling. I don't think it's going to feel like a great humbling for us right now. And again, this whole business about wanting to participate in cause and effect, you know, as I think about this idea that, you know, if different indigenous peoples were adhering to this, maybe we could call it an original instruction, that, you know, that we have to honor the sovereignty of all beings. And, you know, what I was talking about with these young people is I talk about that sacred hoop of life in which every single life form gets to have a seat, including us. You know, we were given that seat. So there's something about us that is honorable and capable and worthy of having that seat. Just that we have it tells me that.
Indeed.
Because I look around at all my relatives, the flying ones, swimming ones, creepy crawling ones, four-legged ones, plants, water, stone, mountain. You know, they're all doing it in this amazing harmonious and way that's like this life symphony, you know, that is moving in such a way that they only enhance each other. And so there is a way for us to do that. And I think we have that evidence of different cultures who really were striving to be that kind of being here on that hoop of life.
Yeah.
But it also changed what our endeavors were.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've been saying. It's not that indigenous peoples didn't have the smarts to invent a nuclear weapon. We got the smarts to do that. It's not a matter of intelligence, of what is your ethic? What is the law that you're abiding by? So all of that in ingenuity, all of that desire to participate in cause and effect had to be channeled in other very distinct ways that could, again, create harmony and be a part of this symphony that could only enhance all the life around us.
Yeah.
It wasn't about subduing or wiping out or
hoarding
or that wouldn't really make sense, right?
No. And what was the universal law that Doug talks about?
Do no harm, cause no damage, don't impose your will on others, and
Can't remember the other one.
one other. I've got it written on my phone.
One other.
I'll get it for you.
It's so beautiful. It's so simple, isn't it? And of course, it applies right across the board to all our relations. Theo's phone.
Here it is. Universal law: cause no harm, cause no loss, do no damage, and don't impose your will on others.
Yeah. So I guess I would call that the law of honoring the sovereignty of all beings, right?
Yeah.
So when I think about that sacred hoop of life, and I look at everybody else in that community, and I'm like, so each one of them has a perfect design for thriving life. And all of them together, if they're all enacting their perfect design for thriving life, then everything literally sings and hums and bears fruit and etc. And so we also have that opportunity and that possibility. And I think the question is, do we enter for thriving life is? And I think we don't. So obviously now feels like that time where we're having to go back and possibly consider that.
Yeah.
But what I think about in terms of that law of sovereignty is, so it takes all of the insects to be, one very simplistic idea about this symphony is to think about these insects have to be able to pollinate in order for things to flower and fruit, in order for other animals to live, in order and so everybody has to be able to enact their design for thriving life in order for everything else to thrive. So when we step over that line of our neighbor on the sacred hoop of life and impede them from being able to enact their perfect design for thriving life, then we're automatically lessening that optimal possibility for the whole hoop to thrive. Because everybody on that sacred hoop has to be able to uphold their design for thriving life. If anybody doesn't uphold their part of the hoop, then the integrity of the hoop begins to fail. So that's another way, I think, of thinking about sovereignty. So rather than, I feel like just like with kids, or maybe even especially with teenagers, if you go in and start laying down the law of, you're lazy and you don't get up and you don't, I feel like that's how we are in humanity right now. So if we sit back and just, beat ourselves up or beat everybody else up around us and say, you're just not doing it right, you always do this and you never do that. Yeah, that's one way of getting it done. But what if we just think about this possibility of stepping in and making this life thrive? Like, I don't know. I think that's like moving in the positive and
totally.
and is much more exciting in its possibility rather than all this terrible shame we're going through. I mean, I think maybe some of it is helpful because, gosh, we sure have created some serious atrocity amongst ourselves, but also now, so that's so evident. But I want to reach for us having. Being able to experience a joyful way of being, a five-fingered one.
I think of, as you were talking about that before, I had visions of playing roly-poly, how kids do on the earth, and are praying and singing to the earth and kissing the earth, and just light-hearted joy on the earth. She's looking at me like I'm really weird.
There's a delay. I think that's what it is.
You're kind of breaking up a little, so I kind of have to fill in the blanks a little.
Okay.
I'm hearing you, and I feel like no, I think that that's what we really spent a lot of time doing
Yeah.
back in the day. You know, we spent a lot of time in praise and celebration.
And that's what children do. They stomp the earth. They really do.
Yeah.
We got some we got some questions coming in here. I'm just going to jump back to the another document here that when I was writing them down. These were relating to when we were talking about the fact that time is not linear. And Janice asked, does that mean we should talk to our child self? And Simon says, could this also mean that we can talk with our future selves and then meet them, us, or me?
I should Coco.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of broke up a little bit there, but I think what you were asking me was, you know, talking to our child self is one way of moving on that timeline in a nonlinear way. But could we also be addressing our future self?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when I've heard my elders pray before, you know, oftentimes they definitely address our ancestors, the ones who did whatever they did. It must have been the right thing, because here I am, you know. So we give thanks to them and bring them and acknowledge all that their knowledge and their way. And then I hear them say, and we also reach out to our ancestors to come. So I know for me, in my prayer, I always say to them, so I'm also acknowledging the ancestors to come and the ones who are already living the solutions that we're seeking right now. We're, you know, sing out to us, call out to us, because we're coming your way. We're looking for you. So help us find you, you know. So that's one way that I think I do that. But also, yeah, like I say, I'm still working with this time bendy thing. I'm kind of I realize I'm pretty attached to the way I was taught, so I have to keep loosening the straps and trying it out a little. But one of the things that I do is I really feel, because I feel like maybe it's because I come from a culture that was subjected to attempted genocide. So there's that, you know, well, and there's evidence. It's not just a sense. There's evidence of a pretty amazing life that many indigenous peoples on the earth have had in terms of harmony, thriving, really powerful spiritual life, really powerful relationship to cosmos, as well as the earth. And so I feel like in recent history, recent meaning like, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 years, we've sort of been dumbed down quite a bit. And
I should
and
say.
so and that has a lot to do. So for me, I have a lot of compassion for us, because I feel like we're really working against a lot of deception and illusion and delusion. So I feel like we, you know, it's not that we're a faulty, crazy, bad-hearted species. We're getting a lot of help to be deceived, I think.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want, so oftentimes I'll sort of address I guess it would be a way to describe it. And I say, so in my DNA, there is a record and a memory of different times on the planet with something very specifically. I reach right into my DNA and I go back and I ask, you know, those in my lineage, those who have a real lived experience, that have a somatic experience of success in this particular way, that way that I'm trying to work with, to find right now for myself. Those of you who know that place, I ask that you send that forward to me here now. Again, I'm still talking as though it were a line, but anyway, and I ask that you let me feel it in my body. Like, what kinds of feelings would my body have? What kinds of thoughts would be going through my mind? What would I be having in my heart? Just so I can know what it feels like and know what I'm aiming for. And I find that to be very, very powerful. So in a way, that's sort of a similar vein to, I think, what that question is trying to ask.
Gosh, that's so beautiful. I've really taken something from that that's rooted for me.
Yeah. And Pat, I'm gonna post this up here. I don't know if you can see that. It says, Pat says the all-in-one applies to us as well, doesn't it? I mean, all our expressions across all dimensions are out there having their own experiences. Therefore, the all present now. So it's fascinating once you start to think about that.
Yeah.
The fact that if we are multi-dimensional beings experiencing, things much bigger than what our 2D, perception is, it's quite fantastic to see that.
And also I'd cut in and say, we're so used to in this 3D reality dimension, we are so tuned into our 5 physical senses or 6 senses that we're asking how it is to listen on other levels, on other dimensions and realms, what it feels like to listen. Maybe it's not like the physical, could be in another way, like you said, feeling through the body.
Yeah. Well, and I'm experimenting. I'm not going to say it's my absolute belief at this point, but I am exploring and experimenting with this idea that perhaps that maybe even humanity's original has shut down in some ways. Some parts of us have been shut down, or even genetic tampering. I don't know how it would be shut down exactly, but let's just say that's a possibility. So in the event, I mean, I've heard that from many different directions.
Yeah.
And I have that sense that I feel like our spiritual capacity, well, the fact that we even call it a spiritual capacity, I think if we were in our full original design, we might not even have to differentiate it as being a spiritual capacity. It would just be us, But right now, it's like we have to try so hard and reach out with all of our feeling to that aspect.
Yeah.
And some people are a little bit more sensitive to that than others, but it's always like a really like strenuous reach. And I have this sense that that's what's always tickling us. And that's why that's what they also said about this whole science, magic, and medicine. They said, you're really vulnerable to anything that shows up with what you perceive as supernatural ability, and that we've gotten in trouble with that in the past, because once we start seeing any kind of ability that is beyond what we see as normal, we kind of just go right for it without really considering, well, what is the intention and what is the motive behind the being with this ability.
And tuning in.
Brought up to me stone circles in the UK. So there's some discernment that needs to be happening at the same time. But we're very vulnerable to that, and I think that's also sort of on the flip side, our unwillingness to be of us sitting here on camera right now. But I mean, in modern world in general, it's a really big hurdle for many people to get over, to get out of only what their senses, their 5 physical senses can perceive. Like as soon as they start heading out of that, they're like, uh-oh, we're going woo-woo, and we're, anyway, it's like, it's a really tough barrier to break through for so many of us. And I think that's partly because of the pain of having that aspect of ourselves shut down. It's so painful that it's kind of like we don't even want to try to open it. But I really feel like, I mean, to me, I say the good news about the state of the affairs in the world right now is, for me anyway, is that I say we're the domain of the spiritual now. And so that's, of course, where I like it the best. And so I really do feel like, that aspect of ourselves is what's called on, even though it can be difficult and feels kind of strenuous at times to really reach and to receive this guidance, to receive what is that next step, what in the world should I be doing right now. I really feel that from all directions, people saying, but I do feel like we're being met right now, and I do feel like that whatever some of those blocks have been that have blocked our original design, that those are being lifted, and so or moved in some way. And so I feel like we just have to sort of hang tight a little bit in that way. I mean, there's still action to take. There's still ceremony and prayer to make, but I just think that that's on the way. I think it's our next step. So I think a lot of our solutions that I think we're really craving are going to come out of a very different kind of cause and effect than our rational reductionist thought processing training has prepared us for.
Yeah. You can call it a shutting down, but also it's, this almost like this blanket amnesia. So how we're coming out of it at the moment with this awakening and slowly remembering all that we are, that is that blanket lifting. Because, Mac McCartney, who spoke in our same episode as you, Healing Our Ancestral Wounds, he gave a talk at Taos and talked about, who our ancient British tribes were, and 60 people in that room. And no one could name one of the tribes. It was extraordinary. And they were all, quite enlightened, or certainly on the path to awakening, curious human beings. And none of us, apart from maybe one or two tribes. So it really feels like this blanket of amnesia, and I'm so interested in that. And I believe also we're having help in lifting that.
Yeah. So in one of my practices, along with that, kind of going back through the Akashic record, I guess you could say, of my DNA, to find those experiences that I don't have right now. But also, when I meditate, so for me, meditating is sitting at the altar and I sing songs, and then I sit and I ask, is there anything that you want me to know right now? And part of that process for me is to say, so for instance, if I used to have more strands of DNA than 2, that has been presented to me, for instance, or maybe I had more chakras that operate, or anyway, some aspect of my body, mind, heart, and spirit that used to be expanded that is not quite so much. I go ahead and reach out for the etheric imprint, I call it. The etheric imprint of that full capacity. And I want to surround myself with that. And sit and try to make that hook up on a etheric energetic level, to be able to perceive. So I guess I haven't really ever said that out loud, but I'm realizing that that's become a fairly regular practice for me. That's related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I hadn't thought of that. That's brilliant. That's like Jagger says, calling back all the parts of you that you've sent off, looking to heal different parts of your body where actually the answers are all inside. You just need to call them all back.
Soul retrieval.
As a human nature, we tend to look externally for things to heal ourselves, where actually the majority of the healing will come from the inside and the internal work.
And also, I mean, I guess as you say that, it sounds a little bit like it's all inside of us, say, and I mean, I guess I'm wondering, is it, or are there pieces missing? And that's why this endless search. But what if I call in, that experience of that wholeness, in whatever capacity I can, keep working with that. So I mean, at the very least, I'm declaring myself fully available to whatever, in whatever way I can be fully restored during this time. Or even if I don't have those pieces with me, I think my spirit knows that fullness, that fully intact being, and to at least energetically plug into that image or even that hologram. I guess I'm using all these words I never use, but anyway, here we go. I don't know what other words to use, so
no, we get you.
So Yeah.
Okay,
Because
we have.
I mean, I really have this. Go ahead.
No, we got a question here, Pat, which is I think is a great one. Annie Pepper says, "Where is the illusion, delusion, deceit coming from at root, and how do we recognize and dispel it when it arises?"
Great question.
Well, to me, that's where the prayer comes in. And I always try to be mindful of those who can't relate or don't feel connected to prayer. But I don't really know how else to say it in this instance. I don't have any other. Sometimes I can talk about, setting intention, or, there's ways to talk around, because prayer can be a triggering word for some folks. But in this instance, all I can say is, man, you got to pray. I got to pray. I got to pray all the time. And ask not to show me that path, show me the truth, show me what real love is. And part of my prayer is, how do I participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love? I make myself available for that. Just show me what to do, show me how.
Nice.
And then so doing that work about addressing those archetypal woundings of humanity, I get worried that I'm deluding myself, or something is, taking me on a wild goose chase sometimes. And so I always have him being deceived. If this isn't your voice, the one, true light, if this isn't really your voice, then I call on you to just put a stop to this right here and right now. Don't let me travel down those paths. And so I feel like, for me, staying in touch in prayer, sitting at my altar, singing the old songs, keeps me in a place of being able to have discernment. And one of the ways that I can know that I'm heading into shame, or into deception, illusion, and deceit, is when I start getting really deep into shame and just general depression or anger, because and it's not to say that I'm never going to have those feelings. I do, and I mean, I'm kind of also letting go of this story. But for a long time, I have said that, heck, I'm the product of genocide, and there was some serious stuff that has gone down. It's not just a historic tale. It's living in my, as I sit here. And so that's something I've been bringing up when I speak, because I feel like, I mean, I'm kind of torn right now. Part of me wants to just not have to say it, because one of the things I am saying is I'm no longer available for trauma. So I'm trying to leave it behind, but at the same time, I'm still in this place where every now and then I really feel like I need to just say, it takes a lot for me to show up here. It takes a lot for me to stand up in front of you and profess light, life, and love, given the history. But as I say, where we started out from at the very beginning, we're a traumatized species all the way around, and it's multi-generational, and it's on the side of history of having been perpetrated against, or whether you're standing on the side of history where you feel like your lineage were the perpetrators. It's all traumatizing, because I mean, I just feel like we were meant for right relations. As overly simplistic as it sounds, it still stands. We were born for love, and we were born for this Mother Earth, and she's all about love, and she's all about fearless generosity, and that's.
Can I ask you what the medicine is that you bring to this time, Pat?
What do I bring? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what is your medicine that you bring to this time now? What's your medicine you're working with right now?
What's my medicine that I'm bringing now?
Yeah, if that's appropriate to ask.
Oh gosh, well, I don't feel like it's inappropriate, but I'm like, wow. My medicines, I just read this amazing quote by Martin Prechtel. I don't know if you know his work.
Yeah.
If I could remember where I saw it, I might pull out my phone too and try to bring it up. But I took it, and this was quite a while ago, but he was talking about indigenous peoples, and he said, and this is enough to make me cry. He said something along the lines of, I hope in their something about their reconstruction and their, excuse me, I'm going to have to plug in some juice here for us.
So hard when you're trying to remember quotes. I've got a good one here.
I think she's plugging in her app.
That'd be a drag to just blank out on us all. Any chargers today? None of them are working. Oh, hopefully we'll be okay here. So, in this process of regrouping and reconstruction, I'm pretty sure those aren't the words he used, but that was kind of how I took it. Indigenous people he's talking about. He said, I hope that we will come to the place where we move beyond the conversation of justice.
Yeah.
Because, and I remember in his course, him talking about how when we engage with what he called, I think it was imperialism, when we engage imperialism, then they get to define the conversation.
Yeah.
So whatever is in their range to dish out to us, if we spend all our time countering them, they're leading the dance. And so, and I know a good friend of mine, Barry Lopez, also said a similar thing. And his solution or his activity that he would suggest was, the creation of beauty. Like, you don't have to step into the wars. He said, when you go to war, many of your friends will end up dead. When you go to war, oftentimes you kill the enemy only to have another one immediately take its place.
Yeah.
Or you find out you've killed the wrong one. And so in some ways, I feel like the part of my conversation, and sometimes it makes me not that popular with other Indigenous people, is to keep trying to get a view outside of that struggle.
Yeah.
But for Indigenous people and for our medicine, but also as a human being. So I think for whatever reason, that's the vista that Spirit always shows me, is what is possible beyond this trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great
question. I will ponder it.
Would you just repeat the name of the person that gave the quote that you studied with? Because there are people asking.
Martin, Martin, Prechtel, Prechtel.
Prechtel.
I'm Prechtel. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, darling. Whilst he's looking that up, I've got I actually took this off your Facebook page as well, but it's a great quote by Chief Arvel Looking Horse. He says, "You must decide. You can't avoid it. Each of us is put here in this time and this place to personally decide the future of humankind. Did you think the Creator would create unnecessary people in a time of such terrible danger? Know that you yourself are essential to this world. Believe that. Understand both the blessing and the burden of that. You yourself are desperately needed to save the soul of this world. Did you think you were put here for anything else?" Or for something less, actually, it says. But it's such a beautiful quote. And it really, it's so important for each of us to think at this time, what can we do? What are we here to do? What's our destiny to do? What medicine do we bring?
Yeah, and I think lately I've been, and here I am with all these 18 to 28-year-olds, which is really profound at this time,
Yeah.
at this juncture, in terms of world events and climate and etc. But I think being with them for the whole week really brought home to me that in some ways the drama of climate crisis conversation, drama of social justice, atrocities, I think they can be they can overcharge the task, and they can distract us from the real for each of us.
Yeah.
But I really feel like the job, and I love that quote. But the job in that, for me, as I listen to that quote, is you've got to be the youest that you could ever be. You got to be the youest you can possibly be. Like, that is the job, because you were sent here. Nobody just shows here right now for lightly. It's like, it's big. It is big. But the task still remains the same. It remains, you've got to be the youest you can possibly be. Now, having said that, I will also say that so much of our identity is false, in the sense that it is tied up. We're getting identity from systems that I'm going to call, because they're not part of thriving life. And this Mother Earth plan is thriving life. I'm convinced. Everything about her, everything here is doing one thing. It's trying to make more life, trying to make more life, trying to make more life. So the plan is life. And so all of these human systems that arose, that have arisen, in the last, say, 5,000 years, they were all created, and they've all just been growing on each other and following that logic train. If this, then that, if this, then that, until we're like miles and miles away from common sense. So I'm talking about economic systems. I'm talking about health systems. I'm talking about governance systems, like those kinds of systems.
Yep.
Meta systems, maybe we could say, at least human meta systems. And they were all created without putting life at the center.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They had other goals in mind. They had other goals at their center. And so they're faults in that way. So them and pointing at them and saying, gosh, again, you never do this and you always do that, and you're not even seeing this. It's like, well, of course they're not. They were never designed to address what we are being asked to address right now.
Yeah.
What we are being asked to address right now is life. Like, do you want this life or don't you want this life? And so the fact that we get our identity. Yeah, sorry. Every time you speak, you break up a little bit.
Sorry.
So I'm not always catching. Sorry. So we get our identities from these systems that we're not on task. And so when I say you came here to be the youest you could possibly be, that you is actually probably has very little to do with all these systems that are going on around us. And that's why I do think that a spiritual life is really important, because that spiritual aspect, so the soul of the earth and my soul, and that spirit that runs through all of it and all of creation beyond the earth too, I'm going to say, that has truth and an alignment that is, as far as I can tell, is unshakable. So to cultivate that aspect with a spiritual life is what can help us understand what is the you, what is the me that I am, how do I, like, really, what is it? And so we're definitely going through that process. Everybody is saying, well, I don't have to be rich, and I don't have to be a capitalist. I can be someone who creates another kind of economy with my fellow neighbors and etc. I can create gift communities. So all these things are arising. I can have health in different ways. I don't have to be a part of those systems. I don't trust big pharma, etc. So it's happening. And so I just keep encouraging us. And so one of our big tasks right now, as sort of unicorny as it might sound to some folks, it's really true. I think that we are really called on to have some radical self-love and radical self-trust. To trust our gut, to trust our feeling, to trust our love, to trust what draws us, outside of addiction and things that are trauma related, right? Like the real things, the real joy. I mean, that was the final word to all these young people, is your joy is your compass. Because there is no greater joy than being the youest you can be and being dead on in your purpose. Like right now, I feel like I am absolutely living fully in my purpose. And so joy going. Does it mean I don't cry? Does it mean I don't get angry? Does it mean I'm, hard days or whatever? No, but there's even joy in that, because I don't know. When you're on task, that's you. It's there's a flow and there's a beauty to it and a harmony. I can feel that harmony. I can feel everything harmonizing with me. So,
Pat, we had this question last week when we had Antar Karana doing them. He was talking about purpose, and I'd love your thoughts. A few people wrote in to say, I feel lost and I don't know what my purpose is. How do you go about finding it if you are in that stuck place? How would you share tools of how to do that?
Well, one, if you can start asking yourself. So one thing, I have a friend who's really doing a lot of neurological work, and I have a whole spiel I'm talking about consent, which we won't go into right here. But I've given a blanket statement of what I give my consent to, and it's I consent only to the authority of the law of Mother Earth. I give my consent only to the authority of the law of the heart of Mother Earth. So I don't even really know what that means. but it feels right. The words feel right. The combination of words feel right. The order of the words feel right. The concepts in there feel right. That's what I want to align with. And so she said, I love that, Pat. And I love it that you can say, I don't really know what that means. Because she said, when you give your cells a command, like that's a command to your cells. So your mind might not totally grok what that means, but every cell in your body is going, oh, okay, right, good. That's what we're going to do then. And it just starts doing it. So this intelligence of the body is really pretty incredible. And so I've been giving my body lots of commands lately. But one of them is to say, I am available for joy. I have this sign on my refrigerator that people see sometimes who come over, and they always enjoy it. It says ruthless joy. And and so, I think to really begin to pay attention to what really gives me joy. And that's not necessarily drinking a bottle of tequila. There's a sort of joy in that for a moment, but then what follows is pretty rough, right? So I'm not talking about like temporary pain relief. I'm talking about joy, okay? So yeah, if I start paying attention to what gives me joy, that's a big clue for me. But the other thing I would say is, then that's what I was saying to these young people. My methodology, and it's something that human beings have done all over the earth for probably ever, is to go out in the morning at sunrise and to face the dawn and to make an offering. And I usually use either tobacco, that's kind of from my Lakota side, or cornmeal, which is from my Dene side. And I speak to the larger community. So if I mean, part of that larger community is all the rest of the members of the sacred hoop of life. I mean, we are one. We are bound, as Thich Nhat Hanh says. We are interbeing. So I reach out to them and I ask for their help and understanding. How do I harmonize? How can my life be a harmony with you, and enhance all of our lives together? Show me how to do that. And then for me, I add that other layer. It's easy for me to do. It might not be so easy for others, but maybe you could experiment with it, even if it's not something that you might normally do. But I also invite in that larger spiritual community, and ask for their input and their guidance in my day. And I always specify. I make sure I specify that I'm calling on that which serves life, light, and love. And ask for that guidance. I'm here. I want to be of service to life, light, and love. How, please bring those people, places, and events to me that can help me understand who I am and why I am. Why I am is I think is maybe the question that's on people's minds and hearts right now in this place that we're in. And so if you do that for even 2 weeks, you're probably going to start to have some pretty radical shifts. But if you were to commit to doing it for 6 months, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a gesture that the spirits recognize from human beings everywhere, because we've been doing it forever. And I was told, my elders say that, there's spiritual help swarming all around each one of us, waiting
Yep.
to be asked, to step in and to help and to be of assistance. But it can do nothing without our invitation, because that's part of the law of sovereignty, which is also part of the law of the free will clause, as I say, and that governs this place that we're in. But you might be pretty astounded at what can happen if you take up that practice. I know I have been.
We've got a question here from Harry Downer saying, Pat, what was the catalyst that set you on your path?
I think oddly feeling suicidal. I felt really suicidal when I was a teenager. And, everybody told me, gosh, that's the one place you really don't ever want to go or be. And in some ways I would agree with that. But the was once at the point where you're saying, look, I'm ready to just like give it all up to that extreme. Then suddenly all these avenues and possibilities that were out of the question suddenly were back on the table, because even with the people around me, because everybody was trying to herd me into an Ivy League college. So for me,
what a blessing.
All that pressure of being herded into going deeper and being more committed to all these systems I was talking about, and my soul really couldn't do that. So I had to find a way to break out of the need for the approval of everybody around me and really be what my soul was calling me to be. And I had to, I struggled a little to look for it, but I did. So once everything was back on the table, once all options, all the people who loved me around me said, look, we don't care what you do, just don't do that, right? Like we don't want you to leave. So we give you permission now to do anything that you want to do. And so so I guess, hopefully we don't have to come to that point. Maybe we can just say, wow, if all these systems have not been serving the main purpose of what goes on here on Earth, maybe I can give myself permission to open to all possibilities. And I can ask for that guidance. And I can ask for that guidance from the Holy One within. Who knows? We got a knower that lives inside of us.
Yep.
And so to keep calling upon that one to step forward, and so there was that, and then and I also came to another really desperate point where I just sent out this call and I said, I've got kids and I don't want to do them wrong, but I don't know how to keep going here. What should I, what? And what came back to me was these people inviting me to my first Lakota sweat lodge.
Ah.
And that was about 28 years ago. And man, the rest is history. My life has never been the same. I'm still in the sweat lodge, still doing those ceremonies. And that's what runs my life. So I guess that's sort of a weird and depressing answer in a way, but really it's those moments. I just think we need to find a way to give ourselves that freedom without having to come to that point. And I especially think we need to be encouraging our young people to open up beyond. So that's why I keep encouraging them to, I keep telling them your joy matters. So maybe I got to say that to everybody who's listening here, whatever age you are.
Yeah.
Your joy matters, because nobody ever told me that.
Yeah.
It never fails. I could be speaking to an audience of 3,000 people, and I ask them, has anybody ever said that to you? Invariably, like nobody raises their hand. I said, I think the reason that our parents never said that to us is because they kind of assumed that there wasn't really going to be too much joy involved here. Like you were going to have to put your nose to the grindstone and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and et cetera, et cetera. And so, probably just ought to not even bring up joy, right? So, yeah, but no,
in every experience like
joy
that, in every experience like that, there is a blessing. And it reminds me again in the film where Caroline Carey talks about in the dark, there's gold. There's gold in the dark. And that was yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really didn't know how long we were going on. I'm sorry, I've just been on the fly coming back from Scotland, but I actually have to go in about 2 minutes.
That's
So
absolutely fine.
What the plan was.
That's perfect
We
timing.
draw these up to anything between an hour and a half. We were going for an hour and 20, so this is perfectly a beautiful time to wrap up. Do you want to talk about Julian?
Yeah, we did announce on Facebook. I don't know how you feel, Pat. Let me just ask you. We were going to just do a 1 minute silence between us and a prayer for Julian Assange. Nothing about being right or wrong, but just that he is able to, the prayers that he's able to be free and to receive the medical attention that he so greatly is in need of at the moment. Is that a prayer that you wouldn't mind saying in Diné tradition? Then we just do a minute silence. It's up to you. If you don't feel to, then I'll say that.
I think I'm going to leave it to you because I think I really do have to run at this moment, but I will be sure to carry that prayer with you also.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to come in all breathless and leave all breathless.
I will be in touch again with you in the next day or two. And everyone else, please stay on the line and let us do this prayer. And thank you so much, Pat. Beautiful. Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for your time, Pat. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
If you just scroll to the bottom of your screen, you see a little red X saying "Leave the studio," and then that'll finish your connection with us.
Bless you. Oh,
well, I'm so glad that Pat got to join us because I was a little bit worried there the first couple of minutes when she wasn't there, and she did come in, and I think I've been interesting looking at the group and seeing different reactions to so many things. I mean, I shut down the comments on Greta today because whether you believe that she's a puppet, whether you don't believe she's a puppet, it's all about dividing us. The Republicans, the Democrats, Brexit, no Brexit, vaccines, no vaccines. It's all about dividing us. And the more that we enter into this, the more they are winning with their division. And so my feeling with, Julian Assange, nothing's been proven, nothing that he's put out there has ever been proven to be incorrect through WikiLeaks. He's a human being and he's been treated appallingly, as are thousands and thousands of people in China with the organ harvesting and with all these terrible things that are going on throughout the world at this moment in time. But I feel that if we have an ability to put up a collective prayer for another human being, if we really are all one, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. My thoughts exactly. Beautiful. Well, let's just take a couple of minutes and pray that may Julian Assange be released immediately to receive the medical attention that he is so greatly in need of, and may he taste the freedom that is his birthright. A man whose greatest crime was to speak truth and expose justice. So let's just take a couple of minutes for Julian. Oh. Yeah, I don't know how long that was, but
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who's watching this on repeat later, when it comes around to your time zone, just the collective prayer, the more that's sent to him, the better, more powerful it is. May he be free, may he be well, may he be happy.
So this is our last Facebook Live for this side of the festive season.
Yeah, it is. Gosh, anything to say? Both so tired.
Very, very ready for a bit of a festive rest.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us tonight on this live. Thank you to Pat. Thank you to all of our live guests. We've had Caroline, we've had Antar, we've had Matt McCartney. It's just every Wednesday night. It's been great. And from January, we'll be doing them on the 8th of
so I'm not sure who's
onwards.
On the 8th. We might try and get Eshua back on the 8th. On the 15th, we have the amazing White Eagle, Medicine Woman, which I'm really excited about. On the 22nd, Leo Rutherford, who runs Eagle's Wing. He's one of our elders here in the UK. And then also Andrea Cranmer, First Nations. I can't remember the name of her tribe at the moment, but as soon as we know for sure, we'll put them up on the site. But they are only going to, from now on, be available to people who have actually purchased the package.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. It's the inhale after the exhale. And the digital package is still available. The physical package is no longer available at timeofthesixthsun.com/own. And we will keep posting things up. We'll keep monitoring the group. And, often people are reporting posts in the group, but actually it's just because they don't like the opinion of someone else. And so long as it's kind and it's fair and it's done with heart and it's not vitriolic, we are booting a lot of people out as well with no warning.
Being quite vigilant.
You write nasty stuff about somebody else as a keyboard warrior, that you wouldn't say to somebody else in the face, because you'd like to get smacked. Then we have a no
tolerance policy on that.
Exactly.
To be honest, we've got a great group. We want to keep the conversation elevated. It's really upsetting for other people when it's sort of someone comes in and dumps on the group. So we're trying to deal with that as best we can.
But also we can't monitor it 24/7. So if you see something you don't like, and please do just put it up, flag it, and then we see it as soon as we log in.
Yeah.
All right. From Nikki Luna and from me, we wish you a wonderful festive season, whatever your religious beliefs are in the world.
I'd just like to say, because I don't know that we've mentioned this, but great for time for Christmas presents. With 2-3 weeks to go. So we have got the T-shirts, fantastic T-shirts and sweatshirts. The quality of them is amazing.
They really are, yeah.
With all different sayings. So go to our store and have a look at those. But also we've got calendars going up, yearly calendars, and a few more things. Just keep an eye on the store. But mainly is our digital copy of the film, and it's a great thing to gift to someone else. So if you feel inclined, the store is open, just not for the physical package.
I'll post the link in the top.
That'll be next year sometime.
Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your December. And from Nikki and me, we will speak to you in, well, we'll be in touch. But this is our last live one until the other side of the festive season. Good night.
Happy Yuletide blessings.